interrupt this program to bring you...
All right, everybody. My name's Kevin.
My name is Adam.
And I'm Julie.
And we are the Real Movie Guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies and TV shows. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at Chainsaw Man. Following a betrayal, a young man left for dead is reborn as a powerful devil-human hybrid after merging with his pet devil and is soon enlisted into an organization dedicated to hunting devils. That's a hell of a mouthful for this show, and by looking at Chainsaw Man, I think you're going to have an automatic idea of what it's about. But I want to stress to everybody that that's not what you're getting out of this show. Chainsaw Man, for me, and this is someone, I did read the manga, so I already had like a notion going into this, what I was going to be expecting from this anime. It blows me away on so many different levels how good Chainsaw Man is, with how ridiculous of a concept it actually is when you look at it. The idea that there's a character that has a chainsaw that comes out of his head and his hands and he cuts up demons. You think this should be just a straight up like shonen horror kind of action story. It's really not at all. If anything, it's just a really interesting character driven story about like Japanese youth and coming to terms with your existence as a human being. There's so much existential crisis about touching a boob in this show that really just blows my mind that it was even possible. Chainsaw Man for me is I'm in love. I haven't said this in a long time about an anime, but it is definitely currently my favorite anime that's been produced. Adam, what's going on? What do you know about Chainsaw Man? What did you think of Chainsaw Man?
Once again, what a crazy emotional roller coaster we have watched. And I did not expect it to be that way.
Right.
At all. I thought it was great, though. I really enjoyed it.
I think it's fantastic, too. Julie, I know you're not the biggest anime fan over there, but what did you think of this? Because this is one of, something you were, because of me, you kind of had to watch it. So I'm curious to see what you think.
Yeah, I mean, something I didn't think I was going to like at all, but found myself really enjoying. I like how fast-paced the episodes are. I'm usually always surprised when it's coming to an end already. The characters are intriguing, funny, have depth. So I'm really curious to see now that this first season is done, where we go from here.
Yeah, and like I said, the main thing I want people to take away from this is there's going to be a lot of gore. There's going to be a lot of blood. If that's what you're looking for, you will not be let down. But I think you're going to be all really pleasantly surprised with just how exceptional this story is at telling the story of Denji, this character. It's a modern day coming of age story, which again, I don't think a lot of people are going to be ready for or expect to see coming. Essentially, we get to see Denji, and it's interesting too because the show deals with a lot of the kind of storytelling where we see Japanese youth is kind of in this rut now. It has a lot of parallels to the current climate, I think, in Japan, where men are kind of like, you're trying to find your way in life. And I think a lot of young men can relate to that, but especially I think the Japanese youth, where you inherit like the debts of your parents and you're trying to carry on with your life and you're kind of aimless and you don't know what to do. And I think Chainsaw Man is radically different in its storytelling with that. Like, yeah, there's going to be blood. He turns into a giant chainsaw, kills monsters and all that. But like I said earlier, the man has an existential crisis over touching a boob. And, he also thinks like there's a scene in this show that happens later on where he just says to himself, am I a piece of shit? And it's like one of the most like heart-wrenching things when he doesn't know how to feel when someone dies or someone is injured. He doesn't know what emotions to have. And again, it's these existential crises and these kind of storytelling that I think separates Chainsaw Man from the pack. What do you think about all that? Because again, we see the character of Denji really grow throughout this show in a way I didn't know I kind of wanted.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's in such little episodes. It seems like he grows so much, and he's maturing. It's like he's really finding himself.
Yeah, and like I said, it comes in with the action and the horror for sure. Like there's some really great scenes of just Chainsaw Man fighting demons and, doing all that. But I think it's those like little moments that Denji has with some of the other characters. Those are the moments that I think really stick with me a lot more than I think even the action did. How about you, Julie? Did a lot more of that stick with you? I know some of the character interactions that Denji has are, you found even interesting too. I know Aki was someone that you actually liked, where we got to see, he lost his family, and we
Yeah.
got to see kind of his story of him going after the gun devil. And again, a character that typically would be kind of like one note in a shonen anime, we're actually seeing a little bit more of his character, I think. I like how they kind of slowly unravel him throughout this, this first season.
It might be, I guess, a controversial opinion, but Aki is actually my favorite character out of the whole show. I think he has, I guess, the most depth, in my opinion. I want to know more about him. And they keep, there's just these little things we're finding out more and more about him. He has that sword that every time he uses it, he cuts his life in half, and his tragic backstory. So, he's not going to have a happy ending. But you want to still see him, overcome the challenges while also, trying to work with devil. You could tell he doesn't really like working with devils, but he's warming up to Denji and, the fiends and other people around him.
Yeah, by the end of the series, we definitely see a complete change from the Aki that we saw at the beginning of the series, and his relationship with Denji especially. Even characters like Power, who, at first, even in the manga, I'm not going to lie, she comes off a little bit annoying at times. And it's just like, I need you to stop because you're way too much over the top. But there's still something there with her character, too, because you start to see her form bonds, even though she really shouldn't be able to form bonds with other people. I like how you kind of see the progression of her character, even if she's just the dumb sidekick to Denji throughout the show half the time. I really like her character, too. And the mystery of Makima, I know, is one of the greatest things in this show as ever. Adam's doing the weird hand thing that totally creeps me out every time. I want to know what's going on with her, right, Adam? Now, what are your thoughts with her character? Because I feel like she's another one, which is, again, another like coming of age tale. Is like I want to talk about toxic relationships. Denji and her relationship is kind of like the ideal toxic relationship that I think a lot of young men might find themselves put into.
She's scary. She's very intimidating. I would not want to get on her bad side in the slightest. I really do like her character, though. I think she's fun. I think she's definitely got a presence that needs to be in the show. It's like every character has their own specific place in the show, and they're there for a reason. And Makima is no different.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that relationship with Denji is rather interesting too, because she literally refers to him as her pet, as her dog, quite a few times. And again, I think a lot of like comparisons can be made where young men find themselves in a toxic relationship, and they're not sure what they want at this stage. He has a chance to hook up with I think it's Himeno is the supervisor or whatever. He has a chance to like hook up with her, and he doesn't end up hooking up with her because it doesn't feel right. He's trying to save himself for his crush and stuff like that. Again, like these corny like Japanese tropes, but they're somehow still kind of relatable in the world of Chainsaw Man. And even in like the opening sequences, the show has by God, one of the best opening theme songs I've heard in a show. There's this, when they show like his chainsaw face like transforming, you see like he looks at Makima and the chainsaw like grows out of his face. Gee, I wonder what that's in reference to. And he starts having like a bloody nose. It's those things like that, those little like choices that they make in the show that really make it stand out. And I think what we really need to talk about, and that's going to be the biggest thing, is a lot of people, the 3D animation. 3D animation in anime has had a terrible reputation for the longest time. One of the biggest, I think, being the Berserk series, where they tried retelling that, and it didn't turn out so good. Let's put it that way. It was kind of a horror show. I would say Chainsaw Man has some of the best animation I've seen, especially as far as this 3D maneuvering, especially with the way they use the camera and the dynamic action. There's a lot of scenes that make when he transforms into Chainsaw Man. I noticed this early on too. He has a lot of weight to his character. Like he looks like he's heavy, like the way, and you can only do this, I think, with that 3D camera, because you're able to shift it around and move it within the frame. So when he like moves his arms, you see like his whole frame kind of like slinks up and he moves back. Like everything's very well calculated. And especially for anime, where it's notoriously known for like cost cutting measures and trying to save money when they can, I don't get that feeling with Chainsaw Man, Adam. I don't know if you did, but I think they really put a lot of effort, especially into mastering this kind of 3D camera technique they use in the show.
Yeah, I think it just adds another level of impact to not only the scenes themselves, but physically in the scenes. It's like it adds, that depth another perspective that I was not expecting there to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of movement in the scene when there shouldn't be. Like even if it's like
Mm-hmm.
someone just like moving their hand slightly, moving their fingers, or like moving a body, you get so much more of that with 3D animation. And I'm glad to see that we're starting to see Japanese animation studios start to embrace the idea of 3D animation and kind of turn it into a useful tool. It doesn't seem like they're overtly relying on it, because there's still a lot of those typical anime cliches. There's still a lot of still shots. There's still, when they can cost cut, they do, because that's what the anime is. That's kind of what it was invented for, let's be honest here. But they're able to take those scenes and make them that much more impactful and artful. What did you think about it, Julie? Because, as someone who hasn't really seen too much of 3D animation in anime, it must be new for you too.
Yeah, I think and all of the characters just kind of seem to like stand out, like physically, I guess, from the background. They seem to pop a little bit, and every motion, like you were saying, was just there was a fluidity to it. Everything was smooth. It was quick. The action scenes, especially, see, these characters darting across the screen and doing things that they shouldn't be doing. It was just interesting to see.
It oozes style, I think, and it really embraces what it means to be like a manga turned into an anime. Because a lot of the scenes they have composite shots. Like there's the scene with the one girl, she summons the snake demon, and it would chomp it, I think it bites the ghost devil's head off. It's not really a spoiler, just kind of something that happens. But the way they frame it, it's like a manga panel almost, where you see the shot and then you see this giant almost splash page of something happening. And I think that's really cool. And again, on the page, it's kind of like a 2D, but you're able to achieve so much more with that 3D animation that it leaves it just that much more impactful. And the last thing I think a lot of people, this is the last positive I really have for this, this show really wears its cinematic references like a badge of honor. The opening alone has so many references to movies. It's crazy, from Pulp Fiction, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. You can tell the original manga creator, he's talked about it many times, I know, where he's been obsessed with American movies. And I think a lot of American film has a lot of impact on this, more so than we've seen with some other more recent anime. Anime seems to be in a trend where it's magical schoolboy lost in a video game, and the Japanese culture that's going on there. While Chainsaw Man kind of seems more, I don't want to say, but I guess it is kind of more geared towards a Western audience as far as its setup and its stylization, more of that Pulp Fiction kind of Men in Black almost organization kind of feel, which I think maybe in some way makes it a little more relatable in some ways for a Western audience to find it more enjoyable. Would you agree with that? And would you think there's some more Western influence more so than some other anime that are out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think most of the movies that are referenced in that opening are Western, directed
yeah, The
movies.
Big Lebowski, for hell's sake, is freaking referenced in that, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I agree that it's pretty funny. It is really funny.
And to the point where I know even there's a final scene with Katana Man and Chainsaw Man are fighting on top of a train. They actually, and they said this in a couple interviews, I believe, where they said they took the scene of Spider-Man 2 and they actually referenced it for the fight scene on top of the train. And if you looked at them side by side, they actually used some of the key frames of animation and actually made it almost 1-for-1 of them jumping through the train and fighting each other and stuff like that. That's really cool. It's nice to see us have an influence. I feel like we always talk about in anything, whether it's movies or TV shows, I'm like, oh, remember this anime did that, or anime influenced that. We don't really get to say it the other way a lot of the time. And it's kind of a nice change. What did you think of that, Julia? I know you noticed a couple of those references too.
Yeah, I really appreciated the Spider-Man 2 reference. I might not have been able to pick it out if you didn't tell me ahead of time, but then once I knew I was looking for it, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I love the Big Lebowski in the opening credit. That's my favorite.
Yeah, I know, with the bowling ball just going like that. Oh, it's so great. It's such a fun show. It really is. Not to say that it's perfect, because, nothing's really perfect. And, there are some things, as much as I want to praise this, there's a couple things I think that we can see that are a few weaknesses. The first thing is, like Adam kind of said a little bit earlier, things happen really quick. And it's really quick in this show. It can go from one point to another, almost feeling oddly placed. Because there's times where I feel like the pacing is very methodical with the character development, but then the beats with the story seem to go faster than the characters at times, if that makes any sense. I feel like the plots maybe at H and we're still on C with the characters. Like we didn't get caught up to that point. We're not meeting there yet. And the manga had that issue too. So it's not really, it's just kind of an issue that they never addressed, I guess, like that. What did you think of that, Adam? Did you ever feel like maybe something was moving slow and something was moving a little too fast at times with the story?
Yeah, there were a couple episodes there where I was like, oh, not really much happened in this episode. And then literally the next episode, it's like shit hits the fan.
Right. And I think it's only 12 episodes, the show. It was
Right.
only 12 episodes. So you had a lot to, I mean, if you look at the manga, I don't even know if they covered half. Maybe they kind of just did hit half. But again, the manga had the same issue. So, you know, they're adapting it, right? That's what most people usually want. They're not making any kind of changes to it.
Yeah, I guess it's a direct translation.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know how much I can argue it, and I think that's only something that we'll see happen later on. I'm not going to spoil anything, obviously, but we will see if they continue that trend. It's something that will continue with this show. At least they're not pulling an Attack on Titan and stressing it out like 5 seasons for the sake of just having to do that. Last thing I'll just bring up. It doesn't feel like much really happens, and I think that also ties into the whole pacing. And the worst part is it's only season 1, this show, and it's really hard to judge it as a whole until we have the rest of the season, because season 1's really only the first half or so of the story. We really get introduced to like 3 or 4 characters at the very last episode that are going to be big players later on. They're new Demite demons and devils and stuff that work with the organization. We get introduced to, I think it's Angel and a couple other ones too. They're going to be bigger players later on, but I feel like you introduced them last minute like that. I didn't have a chance to get to know those characters yet. So again, that's something that's going to carry on in the next season, but it makes it hard to find out where I gauge with season 1, because I have to go with what was presented to me as far as a story. Did they tell that much? Yes and no. I think the characters did a really good job as far as me getting to care for them and want to see more of their adventure. But as far as the story progression, I'd say we're only, not much really did happen. Denji, got out of his situation, joined an organization, fought like 2 demons, and that's kind of where we're at right now. And not really much has happened since then. But overall, I think Chainsaw Man has a lot going for it. So I think we're ready to give our final scores. I'm going to give Chainsaw Man Season 1 a 9 out of 10.
君、変わった匂いがするね。人でも悪魔でもない匂い。これ、君がやったの？
だかす。
I wish I could give this a 10 out of 10. Unfortunately, I do feel like the pacing is just a little bit of an issue with this show. But if you're looking for something that's not the typical anime, but also the typical anime at the same time with a little bit of Western influence, some beautiful animation, ultra violence, great story, this is what you're looking for. Chainsaw Man is a surprise of the year, and I would have to recommend it as probably my favorite anime, of the past year or so. Adam, where do you stand with this one?
I am going to give season 1 of Chainsaw Man an 8.5 out of 10.
ああ、んだよ。てめえもマキマさんが好きなだけじゃねえか。お前、マジで邪魔ばっか狙いやがった。やべえ。
ん？
先輩が金玉の悪魔に弾を襲われました。嘘です。こいつの嘘です。
I think the pacing definitely does hit it a little too hard. I would say it's probably a very high 8.5 if I could.
Right.
Because I did still, I was very excited to see every single episode as they came out. I was on the edge of my seat being like, I have no idea what's going to happen, and I really would like to see. So I think it's definitely the pacing, though, that might throw off some people. But, I mean, for the most part, it's a very enjoyable watch.
Yeah, and I think I can see where you're coming from with that score for sure. And I think until we get the second half, of this. It's not even really, it really is like the second season, I guess is the way they're labeling it. Until we get that other half of the story, it is some kind of in some way hard to judge correctly how I feel about this season. So again, just going by what we're given, that's really all we can do right now. So
I agree.
Julie, how about you? Where do you stand with this one?
I'm going to give Chainsaw Man season 1 an 8 out of 10.
練馬の駅前にお願いします。いや、生子わかります？え？いや、何？
It was an enjoyable show. Definitely noticed, issues in pacing. Would like to see some more characters get fleshed out, but that's what season 2 is for. So I'm curious to see where it takes us. But overall, it was an enjoyable watch. I'm not huge into like action, but it kept me engaged. So
yeah, it's got a little bit of action, a little bit of horror, a little bit of coming of age. I think it's got a little bit of everything for everybody. Chainsaw Man is definitely a surprise of the year. If you get a chance, I do highly recommend the manga. It's something I think you should definitely check out. Even if you don't, the anime is definitely worth a watch. It is currently streaming on Crunchyroll, the dub and the subtitle version, of course, for your viewing. But thank you guys all so much for joining us for this episode of The Real Review. My name's Kevin. That's Adam. That's Julie. We are your Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. We'll see you next time.
If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.